Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Reed, and I'm the Dean of the School of Sciences, Humanities, and Visual Communications. Welcome to the third presentation of the Daniel J. Doyle Technology and Society Colloquia Series in recognition of Dr. Doyle, Professor Emeritus. Tonight's presentation is titled Technology and Interpersonal Relationships, the Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Tonight's presenters are Sandra Lakey, Associate Professor of Speech and Communication, John Mays, Instructor of Speech and Communication, and Joe Lohr, Associate Professor of Mass Media. With over 75 years of combined professor experience, here we have three experts for our field tonight. Thank you.
How's everybody doing tonight? We are not going to pretend like you don't have cell phones, so we're going to use them as part of the presentation. So my very first question for you all, how many of you have a cell phone? Good. Get them out, please. I know, it's awesome, isn't it? You get to get your cell phone out. Everybody got their cell phone out? Yes? No? Okay. Light them up. Hold them up. Very nice, pretty. All right, keep them up, keep them up. Now we're going to do a little weed out. How many of you have a smartphone? Okay, keep them up. Look around, folks. They are here. They are part of our lives. They are with us all the time. And that's going to be a large part of what we talk about tonight is how many cell phones there are and how we use them to access materials. We're going to spend a lot of time tonight referring to these devices you just held up. They give us access to so much beyond the world we are in, almost anywhere on the planet, and they're portable. They go with us. Whereas in the past, this was your access. You would sit somewhere, you would go by yourself, you would deal with your online access, and then you would join others. Where now, the access is this. We're talking about something that goes everywhere with us. It's compared to the cost of a laptop or a home computer or even a tablet. The access is unbelievable. Now, some statistics on just how prevalent these are in our societies. The first, we check our phones every 6.5 minutes on average. For those of you that aren't really good at math, that is 150 times a day. 150 times a day, folks, on average. Second statistic, phones are attached to everything, including baby strollers. They are in our pockets. They are in our purses. They are in our cars. They are in our lives. 1/3 of smartphone users use them at the dinner table, like these fine folks here, where we're interacting with people, or maybe we're interacting with people elsewhere. 76% of users rarely or never turn off their phones. 44% sleep with them and have them with them everywhere. That's a lot of folks. Now, these devices and the access they grant us have become a very big deal. People now prefer to text rather than talk. Young people interact face-to-face and via text simultaneously with each other and others. For many, the progression has been from speaking on the phone to texting to Snapchatting. We are still social and interactive, but in vastly different ways. The technology is here to stay, and we must become more aware how to use it and manage it to protect healthy relationships. We have to become conscious of the subtle and obvious ways that these devices and the access that they allow can impact our interactions and our relationships so we can achieve a healthy balance. As we move through the presentation, we're going to ask you to consider your current choices. Our hope is to give you the right questions to ask yourself to best use these devices in a healthy way. Now, on to our first questions. You're going to get to use your phones. All right, everybody, phones out. You're going to reply to this poll. If you've not logged on yet, you have to go to 22333, and then in the message in all caps, PCTPOLLS. And I'll give you a minute to do that. Again, you're texting to the number 22333, and then the message is PCTPOLLS in all caps. You're playing with your phone. This is great, right? Did I forget to tell you that rates may apply? I'm sorry, but it's going to cost you to play. So take a moment and do that, please. Bless you. Throughout the presentation, these interactive polls will pop up. And a little bit later, we're going to look at the results of this first one, but we're going to move on for now. We're going to look at three aspects of relationships and their interaction with technology. The first is initiating, maintaining, and terminating. Now, for the purposes of the presentation, we're going to take them a bit out of order, where initiating will be first, and then we're going to deal with terminating, and then we're going to save maintaining for the last, because that is where most of the sort of research and the interaction comes from with the devices. So, now, on to the first topic, how we use devices and initiating relationships. Look at our results. Okay, there we go. Boom. Nearly over two-thirds of the audience have used technology to initiate relationships. We start relationships online, folks. We start them using our phones, and we start them using our social media, and we get to know people this way. And we're going to look at the goods of that, the negatives of that, as well as some of the ugly for that. I'm fortunate enough I get to tell you about the good, so that's where we're going to start. Social media impacts all ages and in all contexts. This is not just young people. This is all people using social media and the access they have through computers. Sandy's going to talk later about research that speaks to young people's dissatisfaction with their parents' use of social media and phones. At its best, this access helps us reduce our isolation and explore our personal interests. Social media can sort of give us resources that are not available otherwise, including looking for companionship, special interests like rocks, being super smart, gaming, and information and support for special needs and parents and people supporting people with special needs. In addition, it can provide support to those in need anywhere and anytime. So it's truly a gift in this way to be able to get this kind of support. Some research shows that social media users are more social in their personal and professional lives as a result of using these online tools. With social media, relationships can develop through multiple channels like messaging, Skyping, and it allows for a sort of more complete picture of the person than we would have with just sort of texting or old-timey writing letters. It's easier to establish relationships across barriers such as age, gender, and race because we become bound by our similarities rather than the traditional differences when we meet people face to face. Now, they are the good bits of initiating relationships with social media. And I'm going to turn it on to Sandy, who's going to tell us about, unfortunately, more of the bad that have to do with that.
Start with a question. So if you would like to respond to that question, please. Have you ever moved an online relationship to an offline face-to-face one? So obviously, as John told you, there are positives that come along with using technology to initiate. But don't let those positives overshadow the negative. One of those negatives is oversharing. When people are online, they tend to communicate more openly, and they tend to engage in riskier emotional communication. Things that you would never say or do face to face somehow end up online. Why does this happen? Well, one reason is that people forget who all has access to their information. They may have a small group of close friends that they have an offline relationship with in mind when they post something like that. However, they forget that a lot of other people can see it. Another thing they forget is that it's not really like keeping a diary or a journal when you put your thoughts online. It's always been easier to write our emotions down than to express them face-to-face to people. But we used to do it in a diary or a journal that only we had access to. Now people do those things on blogs or on Facebook, and tens or even hundreds of people now have access to that private information. What people start to learn is that emotions aren't real until they share them online. So when something happens in our lives, instead of sitting there being quiet and introspective and trying to figure out what's going on, we grab the phone, tap, 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 put a message up online, and there it is, for good or for bad. Now, you answered a question about taking a relationship offline. And, well, it's a fairly even split, although we'll go with the no because that's closer to the answer that I wanted. The research shows that it's about a third of the people have taken a relationship offline, okay? We tend not to, for a variety of reasons, but two major ones are, number one, it lacks the immediacy, or what we call psychological closeness, of a relationship that is so important if we're going to turn it into a close relationship. Second, online relationships tend to be intermittent and specialized. Like John was showing you, you might go to a special interest website. So there we only know a very narrow part of a person's life, where to form a close relationship, we need to know a much broader aspect of who that person is. So we are not so likely to take them offline. We refer to these relationships as weaker ties or weak ties because they're not strong relationships. The online can make them feel close because you go on Facebook or Twitter or Snapchat or any of those, and there's a picture or a post, and you feel like you're connected with the person even though they put it up 10 hours ago. The internet allows us to connect with a bunch of people all at one time. So it makes it easier to share stuff. Remember the oversharing, though. It's important that we recognize weak relationships and strong relationships because we have very different expectations for them. And if we confuse those expectations, we might be very disappointed in somebody's behavior because we thought it was a close relationship and they did not behave the way they should. What we're doing is communicating more, but developing relationships less. Recent research has shown that we have fewer people in our lives that we feel comfortable going to in order to talk about a serious, sensitive issue. Research between 2000 and 2010 found that people have less empathy, they have less interest in other people, and less interest in understanding somebody else's perspective. So we think we know people, but part of the reality of why we don't is that the person that is online is not a full picture of who that person is. It is an edited version, often created to meet social expectations and to generate likes, because that shows us that people like us. Now, keep in mind, this is only the bad. So these profiles that are not complete are, in most cases, research shows, absolutely true pieces of information about the person. They're not lies. They're just not complete. So what we do is we choose bits and pieces to use to create that profile. If a person has a LinkedIn profile and then has another one on a gaming website, my guess is they're very different. Both can be very true, but they are very different. What we all then learn is that the positive is what people are going to like. So we learn online not to show our weaknesses, not to show our vulnerabilities, but to give people what they expect. So with too much information on one hand and not enough information on the other, it really is fairly simple to mislabel our relationships. But that problem pales in comparison to some of the ugly aspects that we will talk about next.
Thank you, Sandy. If distinguishing between weak and strong relationships may be a problem, completely misjudging relationships is worse. We have two types of misjudgments here. People we don't know at all but think we do, and people we think we know but come to learn we didn't really know them at all. The first involves people we don't really know but who trick us into thinking we know them well. The victims are often the love-lorn, the tender, the kind-hearted. Those that prey on them are clever, and unlike the true but partial face the average person creates online, the face these predators put on is completely false. The worst, and perhaps more accurately, the best of these scammers are true professionals. These entrepreneurs know their target markets and how to reach them. They use scripts that have been proven effective because they've been tested over and over again, and they find out what works best. The scanners have learned the scripts well, and they are constantly improving them. There's no remorse here, no ethics, just greed. Still, those people don't know, we don't know we think we know, and much less harm than those that we do know and then learn we didn't know them at all. Too far. Back one. These are the people we don't know, and we think of them as, These are the people we think of as friends, but who can turn on us. Help with technology makes it easier for them to become cyberbullies. We ourselves can become guilty. We can to a greater or less extent because we really can, in our work online, find ourselves being crude, being aggressive, and we wouldn't even be that way in a face-to-face relationship. But research says that online, that builds confidence and it builds or creates a lack of control. And cyberbullying can become twisted, sick game in which bullies compete for who can come up with the most vicious put-downs, even when the bullies don't know the victims. 75% of middle school kids have visited a website that is bashing another student. The harm done is the same that's done in schools and the same type of bullying and that, but with one exception. In school, they can leave. The victims can escape at the end of the day. The internet is 24/7. And cyberbullying does more damage because it reaches many more people. More and more states are passing anti-cyberbullying laws and legislation. Still, only 34 out of the 50 states have done so. Pennsylvania requires school systems to set policies against bullying, including bullying by electronic means. The maximum punishment, a mere misdemeanor. Cyberbullying's damage to self-esteem may be ugly, but when it creates desperation to the point of suicide, seeming as the only mistake, as the only escape for it, isn't that really evil? A kind of evil? Whether or not it's intended, whether or not it's even regretted, its consequences are devastating, and in this case, irreversible. Clearly, technology's role in initiating and developing relationships has its good and its bad, and unfortunately, as we see, it's ugly. But what about technology's help and hindrances when we're trying to end relationships? John explained earlier, it may seem illogical for us to go into terminating right now, but termination, at least in most cases, is inherently negative. And so we decided we didn't want to end on such a strong negative note. Here's another question for you. Do you know someone who either ended a long-term relationship via text or email, or was the recipient of that type of text or email? I'm now going to talk about the good technology can do in terminating relationships, but it'll be brief because there's not much to say about how technology may have a positive role in ending relationships. Perhaps the only real positive is that technology may offer a safer way to end relationships that have been abusive, and face-to-face encounters may be dangerous. Let's take a look at the poll results. Wow. Yes. Statistically, it's pretty much the audience itself is on track. I expected it to be. With this audience, I was anticipating a fewer on the yes. Excuse me. In using technology when ending relationships, the majority of the bad may involve avoiding the responsibility that comes with ending a relationship. And technology makes that avoidance easier. Sure, there are simple, if tacky, ways, such as simply texting a message like, "We're done, have a nice life." But there are also ways of passing the dirty work on to others. More and more Americans say, John mentioned it earlier, prefer to communicate digitally than to talk in person. Some surveys say half of us. Entrepreneurs know this, and for a small fee, as low as $10, they'll end the relationship for us. But this lack of responsibility and its impersonal approach is hurtful. It can be perceived as a cruel lack of concern, or as lacking courage in ending the relationship. It can leave questions unanswered and hopes for reconciliation still alive. And such hopes can turn to frustrations to anger, and anger to mean and hurtful actions. Also, the inherent lack of inhibitions technology can foster can lead to situations in which what was once privately and pleasantly shared by two, and should have remained so, to become public knowledge. We may also find technology can entice us to behave in ways we may eventually regret, not only for the effects on others, but also for the damage we may do ourselves. We may believe a relationship is over. We may think a relationship has ended. But the continued access we have for another's social media may make it harder for us to move on. Oh, that this warning were actually a true prompt instead of a facetious and fictitious one. And if these behaviors weren't damaging enough, there are others that are even worse. And one of the uglies is cyberstalking. When one member of a relationship won't let go, the others may be denied any sense of closure. What's creepy is much of the time we don't even know we're being stalked. Ultimately, when we find out, we realize that although we thought the person was out of our life, we discover the person is still all over our life. Not over us, but all over our life. When we find that person's digital footprints in every part of our social media life, we realize we still can't escape from the relationship. That's creepy. But what's creepier is stalkers may not even see the behavior as stalking. They see their actions as those of someone still in love, as someone still hoping and believing the relationship is salvageable. But creepiest of all occurs in the cyberspace of revenge porn. And what makes such revenge technology so creepy is that even the most amateur worker in Photoshop can manipulate, can easily place an ex's head on a most despicable and pornographic image, and now that image is seen by people who don't even know the victim. But thankfully, we're more interested in maintaining and keeping and improving relationships than in ending them. And maintaining relationships is the focus of what's next.
All right, first thing, I need to look around at the 65% who were dumped online and just say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you went through that. Another note that I need to make before we move into maintaining is for all the professors in the audience, there was a young lady who took a selfie outside the room with this in the background to prove she was here, but she never walked in. And I will be happy to describe her to you after the presentation. I'm sorry, but it's my thing. I have to do it. So on to maintaining relationships. This tends to be the area where social media plays the largest part in relationships. There are several good aspects as well as many bad, and we're on to our next survey question, folks. So if you would take a moment and weigh in on this, we'd appreciate it. Social media gives us more access to people. We have relationships with it. It gives us more access to people we have relationships with. And allows us for that personal contact if we're separated geographically. It can be used by those who are close to us, even physically, as well as those who are far away at great distance. Let's take a look at our results. Boom. Yeah, you're maintaining a relationship. Well, keep it up, because then maybe you won't get dumped online if you do a better job with this. But as you can see, I think probably the most overwhelming response we've had so far tonight. So we do spend a great deal of time doing this online and maintaining our relationships. So good for all of us, because there are some positives to it. It can be used to sort of see that we have things that we need closeness with. For someone on military service who's separated, it's a chance to see their normal life and sort of the reassurance that things are still okay. It can serve us with staying connected to people who are far away from us, physically, family members. And when we sort of have the backdrop here of grandparents reading the story to a child who maybe wouldn't physically get to be with those grandparents as a result for that. It can be used to stay in the presence of someone's mind who's far away, or even someone we just haven't talked to in a little bit. Getting a message from someone that you miss them is a pretty nice thing, isn't it? That's a nice thing, right? Yes? We agree? Good, do that right now. Pull out your phone and tell somebody you miss that you miss them. I'll wait. I will. I don't see phones. I'm serious here, folks. Pull out your phones. Send the message. We're going to use this in a healthy way. Let's do it. Somebody you miss. Tell them you miss them. It shouldn't be this noisy. You should just be missing people. I don't hear weeping and sobbing. It should be like, oh, okay, I miss this person. Look, people are smiling. You're good people now. Good for you all. You're doing it. You're using it in a healthy way. And that's a good thing. It's staying connected to people that we care about and letting them know that we care about them. There are even apps that let us work on our relationship and relationship-related topics. Available on iTunes, folks, are apps from the Gottman Institute that focus on issues like communicating more effectively with the people that are important to us. They're out there for us. You can use social media to flirt with someone, a partner, someone you care about. Everybody go, "Aw." Right, although I wouldn't recommend holding the heart pillow. It looks kind of hokey to me. But connected to those people can be a wonderful, wonderful thing. You can use it to plan time together and ways to stay connected to those that are close to us. Now, unfortunately, that wraps up the positive aspects of maintaining the relationships online, and we have to move on to the more negative aspects of relationships online. And I'll turn it over to Sandy for that.
So apparently it's my job to bring you down again. Maintenance is critical to all ongoing relationships. If you want to keep a relationship, you have to take care of it. And it's really good that technology helps us. So through that maintenance, we can end up with a 40-year friendship or a 50-year wedding anniversary. But technology can also interfere with those very maintenance efforts that we make. One of the ways it interferes is it distracts us from the people we are currently with. There's something about that phone that makes it difficult for us to fully connect with the people right there in front of us. Our technology, especially mobile technology, has made us pausable. Don't know if that's a real word, but it works. We're starting to treat life as if it were a streaming video, where when we want to check our phones, we can push a pause button, even during very important events, and take a look at the screen, and then somehow come back to that event as if we'd never left. Unfortunately, when we make these choices, life continues, and people just very well might notice that we actually have left for a little while. When we think about our devices, everybody thinks of the stereotype, oh, the parents complaining about the children, and oh, they're always on their phones. Well, recent research has shown that kids are now complaining almost as much about their parents, and their parents being on their devices. So it's not age specific, it spans generations, and unfortunately produces pictures like this, where here they sit on the same couch in their home when they could be maintaining their relationship, interacting face to face to keep that relationship strong, and instead everybody in the family is sitting there on a different device, totally disconnected from each other. So this possibility is reinforced and sometimes taught very young to children when the parent is busy on the phone instead of paying attention to someone who, in this case, he is quite literally hanging out with. What is that child? Thank you. What is that child learning about how life progresses? Even during meals, when we are with groups, we have begun to accept a lack of attention. Look the next time you see a group of people that you're maybe not part of. What you will probably notice is a few people are talking to each other, and then one or two people are on their phones. If you keep watching that group, what you will see is a change of role. Because, as John pointed out, every 6.5 minutes we sort of need to check those phones. So when one person gets off the phone and back into the conversation, somebody else is leaving the conversation to get on the phone. And that's how the conversation progresses. Now, the problem is life is not pausable. We really don't have a pause button. So every time you check out of that conversation and then check back in, you are losing the thread of the conversation. So it takes you a little bit to get back into it. The effect this has had on conversation is that groups are now realizing they really can't talk about serious topics because people can't follow the thread. So more and more conversations are about superficial topics. What's the dilemma is we want to be with our friends and our family in person, but at the same time we want to be on that phone. We want to have the freedom to use that phone. The person on the phone is becoming almost the equivalent of the person in the room. And to some people, it's like, well, I'm just interacting with another person just like as if he were in the room. Well, of course, the problem is only one person is interacting with the person on the phone, and that person is still checking out of the group to do that. What might surprise you is some very recent research that has discovered that the negative effects of that phone occur even when the phone is not turned on. Just sitting there, visible. That phone reduces empathy, trust, and a sense of closeness between two people who are having a serious conversation. The researchers theorize it's because the phone reminds us of the broader world that we are part of, that we could be part of. It reminds us that maybe there's somebody else out there that would be more fun than the person we're with right now. Maybe there's another activity out there that I could be engaged in that would be more interesting than what I'm doing right now. Another aspect of our conversations that has changed a lot with technology is people moving negative emotional conversations into text. We don't like negative emotional conversations because they're uncomfortable. They make us unhappy. So it's no surprise that when offered the option, there are people who say, yeah, I would like to handle conflict online. Well, they say, I can stay calmer. I can think more carefully about what I say. If this is your vision of conflict, then I understand why you want to go online and do it by text. Okay? Because this is not fun. This is not pretty. But this is also not effective interpersonal conflict management. It looks more like this. Tense, intense, but people are still in control. They're still in control of their emotions. They're still in control of their words. They don't need to use text. They can do it face-to-face. The advantage of this face-to-face conflict is that we actually face and deal with all the messy feelings that are part of conflict. We get the surface issue, but we also get to those underlying issues. So everything can be resolved. And remember, we're talking about maintaining relationships. So we really want to deal with that conflict as much as we can. And if you're trying to do it by text, most likely it's just the immediate issue that might get addressed. And I think we all know that if we don't take care of the issues and the conflict but call it over, they're going to come up again and again until we actually address them. A second type of emotional communication that we're trying to do online more and more is apologies. Because again, apologies are not fun and they're not comfortable when you're the one making the apology. If what you did to somebody was relatively simple, I guess that text that I'm so sorry would work. But if what you did is serious, it's not enough. A texted apology says more, yeah, it happened, and I'm kind of sorry, and let's just move on. But if it's something serious, that's just not enough. If it is a serious issue, then you have to go ahead and have the courage to take that face-to-face apology. When you apologize face-to-face, what you have to do is you have to express your regret, you have to take responsibility for what you did, and you have to promise you're never going to do it again. That's very humbling, and that's why we don't like them. But much like the conflict, that face-to-face apology is going to take care of all those messy feelings. Both people will feel heard. Most importantly, maybe in the terms of maintaining relationships, is that a face-to-face, good, serious apology lays the groundwork for forgiveness. And it is forgiveness that allows us to heal that relationship and to keep it moving forward. Without forgiveness, that relationship could be in serious trouble for a long time. One of the big reasons that conflict and apologies don't work well in text is the complete absence of nonverbal communication. All you have in a text is words. And much of the emotional meaning of a message is conveyed nonverbally. And that's no big surprise because we've had emoticons for decades. They started out as little punctuation marks, and now we have these full-fledged little faces. Now, these may be really cute, but they do not do the work of nonverbal communication. They do not help the words convey the meaning. So when we're looking at emotions, we have to stop and think, now what's going on with text? If I'm texting a conflict or apology, I don't have to worry about what my own nonverbals are because nobody's going to see them. And I'm not going to get any practice reading the nonverbals of anybody else because I don't see them. So when you text a conflict or something like that, you don't see this. You don't see somebody's shocked and hurt response. You don't see the pain on that person's face. That way you can fill in the blanks. We get to decide, oh, well, they're okay with it. I know they're okay with it because I'd be okay with it, so I'm sure they're okay with it. This lack of experience with nonverbal then bleeds over into our face-to-face relationships. So now you've got the lack of experience, plus you have the lack of attention. Every 6.5 minutes we're checking those phones. So what you're not doing is looking at the person you are interacting with, and you can end up with something like this. Now, I think if we look at her face, we get a pretty strong message from her face, but he doesn't, because he's not even looking at her. So much of our emotion is carried on our face and our eyes that if people are not looking at us, they are going to miss a lot of what we are trying to say. So maintenance is critical, and you don't want to let the negatives destroy the positive. And maintenance is the third of the 3 topics that we plan to discuss. And now we're going to move on to looking at what can we do with all this information that we've just given you.
Thank you. Well, the first thing we need to do is put ourselves somewhere else. Right now in Williamsport, it's like 37 degrees and raining. In sunny Barcelona, Spain, as we speak, something called the Media World Congress is going on. And at the Media World Congress are the people that make cell phones and develop social media sites and build cars and build home systems. And as we speak, what they are trying to do is figure out ways to make us more connected more quickly. So my point in bringing that up is we're going to have to look to ourselves to achieve a healthy balance because those folks have a different goal. They want to bring us closer together more often. And I'm all for that for the positives, but as we've seen tonight, there are many, many negatives that go along with it. The first thing we need to consider is that we shouldn't ask technology to do things it just isn't good at. As Sandy said, emotional messages are not something that technology is good at. The other is we can't let it completely replace face-to-face time because we lose a lot of the content and the meaning and the depth that way. Even the Google chairman advocates tech-free times daily and technology-free vacations. We have to set boundaries because they're not going to just happen. So this is my first suggestion. Get yourself the pet cone. Do it. You will be better people for it. And honestly, no one's going to want to communicate with you with technology because you look like a freak. So that will be okay too. So this may be a bit of an extreme example, but there are others that can help us out. This app lets you quantify your usage, how many times and where you're using your phone. You can use that information then to sort of set up your own boundaries. and make reasonable goals for yourself. Okay, I'm only going to look at the phone 37 times today instead of 42. And set those boundaries for yourself. It's not going to just happen on its own. Next one I really like. Buy a phone jail. This allows you to put the phone in there, set the timer, and then pathetically claw at it after 5 minutes, but not get in, where you are going to have to spend that time with the people with you. Silly, but effective, because it's going to help you to sort of set into those healthy habits. This is available at Walmart. You can get it on the way home, or if you want, hit it up right now on your phone. You can get it on Amazon. That would count as a healthy use of your phone. So go ahead and do it. Lastly, you can make a game of it. When you go out to eat, everybody puts their phone on the table. The first person to touch their phone pays the bill. If you are cheap, you're going to get healthy habits in a hurry. Start to use these things to our advantage. We get to be in charge of the technology. Lastly, text less and talk more. It really is that simple. And I'm going to turn it over to Sandy for some final thoughts on this.
Phones are subtle. They have worked their way into our lives in ways both good and bad. Because they're so subtle, though, we are losing that balance in our life of technology and relationships. And what we want to do is get back to noticing that. Our phones are just taken for granted. They're just there. Now, unless somebody asks you to think obviously and consciously about your phone use, like we have tonight, to consider the good, the bad, and the ugly, we don't really pay attention. But when we do, we notice that the good is usually conscious choice. We want to do those things. The bad is habitual, which means we're not even realizing what we're doing. So instead of talking to the people who are with us, we talk to the people who are not. Instead of interacting with our families, we interact with our devices. Instead of connecting with our partners and maintaining those relationships, we connect with the phone, almost as if we say, well, I got to look and see if there's anything better out there. Of course, there are times when using the phone is the best way to communicate with people. But you know, there are a lot of other situations where there's really a very simple step that we could take. Put down the phone and take the risk of conversation. Because in conversation, we make discoveries. Because conversations go off in multiple directions, unexpected directions. I don't think that happens much in a text conversation. Conversation is where we develop empathy, where we develop our nonverbal skills by looking at people, by making eye contact with people, by reading the emotion on their faces, by listening to their voices. It's where we convey to people that we are interested in them because we sit there and talk to them and listen to them. And we convey that interest by coming back for the next conversation and the next and the next. Now, what we hope for you is that in the next few days, you will take a few minutes and think very consciously about your use of technology and your relationships. When you do that, take a minute and visualize your future with the people you care most about, and then work technology into that vision. Because when we do it in that direction, relationships first, technology second, we work it in ways that are positive, where we can connect with people we might not otherwise connect with. We can bond with people. We can stay connected and maintain relationships when people are far away. And we don't want to have that relationship damaged, so we can be in touch with that person. We can even span generations by using technology together. We have to normalize our relationship with technology. Technology's here. We don't want it to go away. We wouldn't know what to do if it did. So what we have to do is think about, all right, here's the technology, who's in control? One of the speakers last year in the Centennial series reminded us that we are not a gadget. We're human. The gadgets are our phones, our laptops, our computers, our tablets. We're the humans. We control them. We want to leave you tonight with the words of Sherry Turkle, who's an MIT researcher who started us basically down this path with her work. She reminds us that this is not a moment to reject technology, but a moment to find ourselves.
Thanks.
I'd like to take a moment to let you ask any questions you have for our presenters. So just raise a hand high so I can see them, and we'll get the mics around to you. Comments, questions, come on.
I was interested that you didn't talk about the ugliness of young people using technology and making the choice, like when driving. I've been told statistically that there's more accidents caused by the use of a cell phone while driving than alcohol. Now, I don't know if that's a true statistic, but it scares the ever-loving daylights out of me. People are making decisions, oh, it's so important to get to that phone call,
Yeah.
and they don't realize that they could kill somebody else, hurt themselves. They're not making wise decisions, and I see it all the time. I see people on the road with their phones up, and these are adults as well as young people, so it crosses the spectrum.
Yeah, and it sort of brings us back to one of those early statistics, every 6.5 minutes. I mean, very few of our sort of times in the car are limited to under 6.5 minutes. So perhaps a timer in the car that goes off every 6.25 minutes, you pull over, check your phone to get back on the road. It'll only take you like 3 hours to get 15 miles, but...
Well, there were a lot of ideas like that, I mean, we could have made this go on and on and on and on. And so we made some very careful choices about limiting the content to relationships. And while, yes, we could have easily worked that in maybe, it was just some stuff had to go because it was more related to something else. I mean, this is only one tiny piece of the role that cell phones and technology like that play in our lives. We just got that one focus and decided we better stay with that to stay within our time limit.
You could go, as Sandy mentioned, the focus here was on relationships and that, but on your point, Volkswagen did a interesting spiel in Hong Kong where the audience was sitting there and they keyed into those people's phones, and while they were sitting watching a road show, suddenly everyone got a text message. And what they were seeing on screen was just a car driving, and when they got the message, what they'd see on screen was the car hitting a tree. In other words, being distracted and how soon that could occur. But in terms of what you said there, in Europe and that, the leading cause of death on highway is cell phone use, according to Volkswagen in that commercial anyway.
But can we trust Volkswagen?
Hi, I'm just wondering your thoughts on something. The American Academy of Pediatrics recently revised their guidelines for kids' screen time. This is regarding a parenting relationship that you had talked about, Sandy. And it used to be 2 hours a day, and now they've gotten rid of that. It's unlimited. Regarding, you were able to highlight some of the good, the bad, the ugly. What are your thoughts on that? I'm a child psychologist, so I cringed when that guideline was revised. I like to give parents kind of a hard and fast rule about hours per day. So what are your thoughts on that?
For me, think of that picture of that family on that couch. That, to me, is not a pretty picture, where you've got 4 people sitting on the couch but not interacting with each other. That to me sort of answers your question. And think also what we said about the parents are just as bad as the kids now. So it's not the parents willingly controlling the children, it's the kids and the parents and nobody actually being in charge unless they do things like John suggested with the lockbox, and people are going in that direction. They're actually putting the devices in the lockboxes or some other receptacle so that people stop using them and that they can interact with each other in their homes. I find it frightening too.
Sandy is sweet and gives a very intellectual sort of answer, and mine with a 19-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son, the threat of smashing the phone if you don't look at me in the eyes when I'm talking to you is an incredibly effective tool, people. I really do recommend it, and it only works. Now, this is the part that's hard. You have to be willing to smash the phone, and I am. So we tend to do it like the phone is for when everything else is done. So when we've talked about the day, when I've interrogated my son about what happened at middle school and all of those things, and things are winding down, the phone gets left out of his room at night, and it's off by 9 o'clock, and he's 14. Now, that's not a recommendation for everybody, but that is how it works in our house.
I just wanted to get your thought on, years ago, we had people that used to call us to wish us a happy birthday, and now they put it on Facebook and they think that is suffice. So is that just going to continue to happen?
It will continue as long as people accept it. When was the last time most of us got a paper birthday card? And I'm talking as a person who is not a teenager by any means. When was the last time anybody got a paper card? Now, I actually got a paper thank you the other day, and I was impressed. Seriously, I was impressed because it was a younger person, and I thought, wow, people still do this. Other people don't even send me a texted thank you when I do something. So I think, unfortunately, if people continue to accept that in the place of the more personal phone call or, God help us, the paper card, it's going to it will become the norm.
I was Solomon ugly through most of this. That was my part. But the culture's changed, and I think lament all we want. The sad point is that's now culturally that's just accepted. It's the new etiquette, if you will, and so it's just accepted. The difficulty is just finding a balance between that cultural, it's okay to do that, and that etiquette is perfectly fine now, and just as Sandy and John had mentioned, and Ugly Me mentioned, it's finding that balance where we put back in that interpersonal connection. Because really, the whole impetus on us right now is to text more. Skyping maybe finds a balance a little bit with at least you're able to see some body language going on. But then again, as Sandy mentioned, whatever's on that screen when we're Skyping ain't really totally us.
It's really people in your generation that will make the decision because you're the ones that have grown up with technology. And that Facebook happy birthday or that Facebook whatever is kind of the norm for you.
I think they have made them.
Yeah. So, as Joe said, we can lament all we want, but until people are, by the way, starting to make some changes. There are people who are actually starting to make more phone calls, starting to contact people more face to face. We can only hope.
Tima, the people you care about, call and wish happy birthday. The people you don't give a crap about, text them happy birthday.
There are nonverbal messages by how we choose to communicate with people.
Well, I mean, it can be a means of communication with it's over, bye. And you're really saying what you really feel. It's over, bye, get out of my life.
Thank you
It really
very much.
surprised me how many have know of relationships that were ended. I didn't expect that bar to be all the way over there like that.
Everybody needs a hug.
Yeah. I'm hoping it's more like you know people as opposed to have been faced with that situation and done it yourself.
So thank you very much, and thanks for everybody for coming. I would like to get on your calendars pull out those phones and get it on your calendar. April 12th, we'll have our next rendition of the Colloquia series where we invite Rick Bass, author and activist, to join us, and I'm really excited about that presentation. So mark your calendar, April 12th. In the meantime, you're welcome to come downstairs and join us for refreshments and reception with our presenters.
Don't forget to text leave.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Leave your text message.
Text leave.
Down in Rapture, first floor. Thank you.